It was 7:15 a.m. in Nashville when an email arrived that completely devastated me. My 1-year-old daughter, Emma, babbled contentedly in her high chair, oblivious to the fact that her father had just detonated our family with a single message. The subject line read simply, "Moving on." My coffee nearly splashed over as I opened the attachment and saw the picture. Donald, my husband of 5 years, embracing a young blonde woman who looked no older than 23. They were posing in front of our lake house, the vacation home we had purchased just the previous year, the very place where we'd spent countless weekends envisioning our future. "The house is mine now," the email proclaimed. "I've already moved in with Amber. My lawyer will be in touch with the divorce paperwork. Don't try to contest it. The deed is in my name." My hands shook as I set down my coffee, but not out of fear. This was pure, unadulterated fury. Donald honestly believed he could simply email me divorce papers and steal our vacation home, the one I'd financed with earnings from my own company. He had absolutely no clue what he'd just unleashed. I glanced at our daughter, still innocently enjoying her breakfast, then at the framed photo on the kitchen wall. Donald and I on our wedding day, both beaming as if we had it all figured out. 5 years of marriage, and this was his chosen method of ending it. A self-satisfied email and a photograph of himself with a woman barely half my age. Taking a deep breath, I picked up my phone. My finger hovered over Donald's contact before I tapped block. Then, I opened my email and typed a concise reply. "Are you sure about that? Better review the paperwork carefully." I hit send, blocked his email address, and turned back to my daughter with a smile. Donald had always underestimated me. He viewed me as the agreeable wife who supported his career while managing my own business as a side project. He likely assumed I'd crumble, perhaps plead with him to reconsider. But he'd overlooked a vital detail. I hadn't built a thriving company by being naive about safeguarding my investments. In retrospect, I should have recognized the warning signs. There were subtle hints I'd disregarded because I was preoccupied with balancing my expanding business and our new baby. Donald had been taking numerous business trips to the lake house over the past 3 months, claiming he needed tranquility to concentrate on a major corporate merger. I'd built my company from the ground up while simultaneously supporting his career aspirations. When we met 6 years ago, I was already running a prosperous online retail business, but Donald treated it like a charming pastime. He enjoyed boasting about how he'd assisted me in transforming it into something real. The reality? My business had tripled in value since our marriage, entirely due to my own hard work and strategic planning. The lake house had been my idea, a perfect retreat for our family, close enough to Nashville for weekend excursions, yet distant enough to feel like a genuine escape. I'd financed it completely with profits from my company, but Donald had insisted on adding his name to the deed for tax purposes, he'd said. I'd agreed, but not without first having my attorney draft specific documents regarding the property's actual ownership. Last week, Donald had been particularly aloof, spending hours on his phone in our home office. When I inquired about the merger, he'd become defensive, snapping that I wouldn't grasp the intricacies of corporate finance. Ironic, coming from the man whose investment portfolio I'd been discreetly managing for the past 3 years. I lifted Emma from her high chair and held her close, inhaling her sweet baby scent. She had Donald's eyes, but my determination. I could already see it in the way she tackled new challenges. Looking at her now, my resolve solidified. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about protecting her future as well. I walked to my home office, Emma on my hip, and opened my laptop. Within minutes, I'd emailed my lawyer the documentation verifying my purchase of the lake house. Then, I accessed the security camera feed I'd installed at the property, another precaution Donald was unaware of. The cameras had captured everything, every visit, every guest, every instance of betrayal. Amber might be reveling in her perceived triumph at the lake house, but she had no idea she was starring in a video that would play a significant role in my divorce proceedings. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel, my assistant. "Julia, you need to see this." Attached was a link to Amber's Instagram profile. Going back months were dozens of photos of her with Donald. Some were even taken in our bedroom at the lake house, with her wearing my clothes, using my belongings. The most recent post showcased her flaunting a massive diamond ring, my grandmother's ring, the one Donald had promised we'd give to Emma on her 18th birthday. I felt nauseated. This wasn't a recent affair. This had been going on since before Emma's birth. In one photo from 8 months ago, Amber proudly held up a key to the lake house, the caption reading, "Home sweet home with my love new chapter. Moving in together." While I was awake all night with our newborn, Donald had been playing house with a woman barely out of college. The dates on the photographs correlated perfectly with his business trips. Every time he'd said he was working late, every weekend he'd claimed. My hands trembled as I opened my banking app, and that's when the second blow landed. The joint account where I deposited money for Emma's college fund was drained. Every penny, almost $100,000, vanished. A transfer out yesterday to an account I didn't recognize. The rage I'd felt earlier morphed into something cold and calculating. I immediately contacted my bank, then my lawyer. Within an hour, I had confirmation that Donald had been systematically shifting money for months, orchestrating this betrayal. He'd even attempted to access my business accounts but had failed. Those, at least, were secured by ironclad contracts and separate banking arrangements. Rachel called while I was speaking with my lawyer. "Julia, there's more." She sent a series of screenshots from Amber's private Facebook page. The woman had been boasting to her friends about landing a wealthy older man and how they planned to fleece his unsuspecting wife. There were even messages mocking my supposed obliviousness, claiming I was too preoccupied with my little online shop to notice their scheme. Little did they know that Little Online Shop had made me a multimillionaire. I'd kept that information discreet, allowing Donald to believe my business was merely successful, not wildly profitable. His ego had prevented him from ever truly examining my company's financials and comprehending the extent of what I'd created. I looked at Emma, now peacefully napping in her playpen. "Don't worry, baby girl," I whispered. "Mommy's about to teach Daddy a lesson about underestimating women in business." I spent the next few hours in a whirlwind of activity. My lawyer, Sarah, arrived just before noon. As we sat in my home office reviewing documents, Emma napped upstairs with Rachel on watch. I'd hired extra security for the house. Something told me Donald wouldn't react well to my email. "He's not as intelligent as he believes," Sarah commented, examining the lake house documentation. "The deed may be in his name, but we have irrefutable evidence that your business funds purchased the property. The transfer records, the contracts, even the emails where he acknowledges it was your money. It's all here." I nodded, displaying the security camera feeds on my laptop. "There's more. Look at this." The footage revealed Donald and Amber entering the lake house at various times over the past months. But what truly caught Sarah's attention was the footage from 2 days prior, showing Donald removing box after box of items from the house, including several pieces of art I'd acquired with company profits. "That's attempted theft of business assets," Sarah stated, taking notes. "The art collection was purchased through your company for tax purposes. We have the documentation." Just then, my phone rang with a call from an unknown number. I put it on speaker. "You think you're so smart, don't you?" Donald's voice was sharp, edged with anger. "Check your business email, Julia. My lawyers have been busy too." I accessed my email and felt a lurch in my stomach. Donald's lawyers had filed an emergency petition asserting that my business had been built using his expertise and connections. They were demanding a full audit and temporary control of my company's accounts during the divorce proceedings. "You'd actually try to take my company?" I maintained a steady voice despite my racing heart. "The company I built before I even met you?" "You built?" He laughed derisively. "Who do you think provided you with all those corporate contacts? Who introduced you to the right people? Face it, Julia, you'd be nothing without me. Amber understands that. She knows how to be grateful." I muted the phone and turned to Sarah, who was already typing furiously on her laptop. She held up a finger. "Wait, Donald." I unmuted the phone, buying time. "Think carefully about what you're doing." "Oh, I have. My lawyers will be in touch about Emma, too. You're too busy with your precious business to be a proper mother. Amber was great with kids. She used to be a nanny." The threat to take Emma chilled me to the bone, but before I could respond, Sarah slid her laptop across to me. On the screen was an email from 3 years prior, one Donald had sent to a friend, complaining about my success. She won't listen to my business advice at all. Says she doesn't need my help, and she's right. Her company's worth more than my annual salary now. It's embarrassing. I smiled into the phone. Donald, I just sent something to your lawyer. You might want to consult with him before making any more threats about my company. What are you talking about? Let's just say your email archives aren't as private as you thought. Call off your lawyers, or the next email I send will be to your boss. I wonder how he'd feel about all those corporate contacts you claim to have given me. The line went silent, then click. Sarah was still reviewing Donald's emails when Rachel burst into the office, her face pale. Julia, you need to see this, right now. She thrust her tablet at me. On the screen was a draft press release from Donald's company announcing his promotion to Chief Financial Officer, effective next month. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. The timing of his affair with Amber, the calculated maneuvers with our accounts, the aggressive legal tactics. This wasn't just about leaving me. He was clearing the decks. Before his big promotion, trying to secure assets and minimize his losses in the divorce. Rachel continued, There's more. Amber isn't just some random girlfriend, she's the CEO's niece. I felt a sickening punch to my gut. Donald hadn't fallen for a younger woman. He'd orchestrated a relationship with the CEO's niece to secure his advancement. The lake house, the stolen money, even the threats regarding Emma. It was all part of his calculated plan to launch his new life as CFO with his perfect, well-connected young wife. Sarah looked up from her laptop. Julia, I've found something else. The company merger Donald's been working on involves one of your biggest business competitors. If he becomes CFO, he'll have access to information that could severely damage your company. My hands clenched into fists. Donald wasn't just trying to hurt me personally. He was maneuvering to destroy everything I'd built. I thought about all those nights he'd claimed to be working on merger documents in his home office. Had he been sifting through my business files instead? Check my home network activity, I instructed Rachel. Focus on any attempts to access my business servers. While Rachel worked, Sarah made another discovery. Look at these emails between Donald and Amber from 6 months ago. They were plotting this before Emma was even walking. Amber wrote, Once you're CFO, we can use the insider information to push Julia's company out of the market. Uncle Robert says he'll help. Nausea churned in my stomach, thinking about their conspiracy against me while I cared for our newborn daughter. But their arrogance had made them careless. They'd left a trail of evidence that could sink not only Donald's promotion, but the CEO's reputation as well. Rachel's voice interrupted my thoughts. Found it. Multiple attempts to access your business servers from Donald's laptop. He didn't breach your security, but he tried. That's corporate espionage, Sarah stated grimly. I stood and walked to the window, watching Emma playing in her playpen with her favorite stuffed elephant. Donald thought he was so clever, leveraging his relationship with Amber to secure his future. But he'd forgotten the most important lesson in business. Never underestimate your opponent. Sarah, I turned back to my lawyer. Draft an email to the company's board of directors. Include evidence of Donald's attempted corporate espionage and the CEO's complicity in using insider information to target a competitor. Add the security footage of Donald stealing company assets from the lake house. What about Amber? Rachel asked. I smiled grimly. Oh, I think the board will be very interested in how their CEO used a family member to orchestrate corporate espionage, don't you? Just as we prepared to send the email, my phone buzzed with an alert from the lake house security system. Donald was back, and he wasn't alone. Not only was Amber with him, but so was her uncle, Robert, the CEO. They were carrying boxes into the house, more of my belongings, no doubt. Wait, I told Sarah, watching the live feed. Let's see what they're doing first. Through the security cameras, we could see them in the living room. The audio was crystal clear, another feature Donald was unaware of. They were celebrating, champagne flutes in hand. To the future CFO! Robert raised his glass to Donald. And to my beautiful niece, who helped make it all happen. Julia has no idea what's coming. Donald laughed. Tomorrow morning, the board announces my promotion, and by afternoon, our legal team will have control of her company's accounts for audit purposes. Within a month, her business will be worthless. And the best part, Amber chimed in, she thinks the lake house is her biggest problem. Wait until she finds out about the offshore accounts. I froze. Rachel, what offshore accounts? Rachel's fingers flew across her keyboard. Within minutes, her face darkened. Found them. Donald's been funneling money from your joint accounts into offshore holdings for months. Not just Emma's college fund. He somehow managed to divert nearly $300,000. This was bigger than I'd imagined. Donald hadn't just been planning to leave me. He'd been systematically stealing from our family for months. The lake house drama was a mere diversion from his larger scheme. But then Robert said something that made my blood run cold. Once Julia's company tanks, our merger goes through smoothly. Her market share will be split between our subsidiaries, and that troublesome ethical business model of hers will be nothing but a memory. My company wasn't just successful, it was disrupting their entire industry with its commitment to sustainable practices and fair labor. This wasn't just about Donald's promotion or his affair. They wanted to destroy everything I'd built because it threatened their way of doing business. Send the email, I told Sarah. But first, add one more thing. Access the backup server password, Emma's birthday, and attach the file marked Insurance. Sarah's eyes widened as she opened the file. It contained years of documentation regarding questionable practices at Donald's company, information I'd gathered while managing his investment portfolio. I'd kept it as insurance, never imagining I'd actually need it. Julia, Rachel interrupted, staring at her screen. Donald just tried to access our company servers again from the lake house. He's getting desperate. I watched through the camera as Donald excused himself to the home office. My home office. He sat at my desk, likely attempting to hack into my business accounts again. But this time, our IT team was prepared. They'd created a false portal, making him believe he was succeeding. Let him in, I told Rachel. Let him think he's won. Because in about 10 minutes, that board email goes out, and their whole house of cards comes crashing down. Sarah looked up from her laptop. Email's ready. Should I hit send? I took one last look at the security feed. Donald, Amber, and Robert were still toasting their illusory victory. Do it. The response was swifter than I anticipated. Within minutes of Sarah sending the email, Robert's phone rang. Through the security feed, we watched his face turn ashen as he listened to what I presumed was the board's immediate reaction. What do you mean, emergency meeting? He yelled into the phone. Who sent? What evidence? Donald grabbed his own phone, presumably checking his email. The color drained from his face. The servers! She knew! Julia knew I was trying to access them. It gets better, I murmured to Sarah as we observed the scene unfold. Wait for it. Right on cue, Amber's phone began buzzing with notifications. Someone had anonymously sent her private Facebook messages to every board member, the ones where she bragged about helping Donald steal corporate information. The security camera captured the precise moment their celebration imploded. Robert was screaming into his phone, Donald frantically trying to close his laptop, and Amber was in tears, mascara streaming down her face. Then came the coup de grace, police cars pulling up to the lake house, lights flashing. Turns out corporate espionage and financial fraud are serious offenses. Who knew? I picked up Emma and held her close as we watched the scene through the cameras. See that, baby girl? That's what happens when people underestimate your mommy. The last thing I saw before the feed cut off was Donald being led away in handcuffs, still ranting about how the house was his. The fallout was spectacular. Within 24 hours, Donald and Robert were both terminated. The board's investigation uncovered even more than I'd known, not just the plot against my company, but years of fraudulent activities. Amber's involvement in corporate espionage ruined her burgeoning influencer career. Last I heard, she'd moved back in with her parents in Ohio. The offshore accounts were frozen and investigated. Every penny Donald had stolen was returned with interest. The lake house? Turns out, attempting to steal company assets is an excellent way to forfeit any claim to property. The deed was transferred to my name, where it rightfully belonged. Donald attempted to apologize, sending lengthy emails about how he'd lost himself, how he'd been seduced by power and a younger woman. I never replied. The divorce papers were unambiguous. He lost everything he'd tried to steal, and then some. The evidence of his corporate espionage ensured he'd never work in finance again. As for me, my company's ethical business model attracted even more investors after the scandal. We expanded into markets that Donald's company had dominated, our reputation for integrity drawing customers who'd lost faith in traditional corporations. Emma and I spend weekends at the lake house now, creating new memories. Sometimes, when I'm sitting on the deck watching her play, I think about Donald's smug email with that photo. He thought he was announcing his victory, but he was really just documenting the beginning of his downfall. I kept that email, by the way. It's framed in my office, a reminder to never underestimate a woman who's built something worth protecting.